Thank you for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to speak about applications and livestock monitoring today. I'm Sanket Bhatia. I lead the sales team within the gas sensors business at Axetris. So today, I'd like to speak with you, first of all, about what the environmental challenge is within livestock monitoring. Uh, then I'll go into the importance of gas detection to solve this challenge. And then I'll summarize the advantages that the LGD Compact product and technology can bring to these applications. So first of all, why is livestock monitoring a very important piece of the puzzle to solve the environmental challenge? So within livestock monitoring, of course, there is a huge focus on reducing emissions, so greenhouse gas emissions primarily, but also other emissions. The world emits around 42 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent today, and a huge part of these emissions are coming from livestock operations. And this is why this is a very important piece of the puzzle if we are to solve the environmental challenge. This is the emissions part of the challenge. There is, of course, the other part, which is to increase efficiency and animal well-being within livestock operations. So these are the two pillars of the challenge that needs to be solved within livestock monitoring. What are the gases which are important for these two facets of the environmental challenge? It's really methane, carbon dioxide, and ammonia. They are a little bit more or less important when we look at this challenge from these two perspectives. So within the emissions monitoring, it's methane and carbon dioxide, which are the most relevant gases because of their greenhouse gas potential. From the efficiency and animal well-being perspective, also ammonia becomes very, very important because it can contribute quite a bit to the odor emissions as well as animal well-being. Now, why is this very, very important, and where is it addressed? So the livestock monitoring challenge is addressed right at the very top within the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, which have been formulated by the United Nations. So there are various goals which touch upon these two aspects. So there is, of course, the environmental protection side to reduce environmental impact of livestock operations, but there's also the other side to reduce animal cruelty, to increase the well-being of animals, and this can be done by increasing the productivity of animal and livestock operations. Now, the thing is, between these two facets that I'm speaking about, there is a lot of overlap. So we can actually uh, increase animal well-being while reducing the impact of livestock operations at the same time. And this is why there's a huge overlap between these two goals that the world is following. I will go into this overlap a little bit more in the next slides. I want to discuss a little bit about the importance of gas detection within livestock monitoring. I mentioned the three most relevant gases for these applications and why are they relevant. So these are the three gases that we had discussed why they are the most relevant. Methane itself, it's a huge impact on the greenhouse gas effect because of its very high global warming potential, the GWP, referenced to carbon dioxide. So it can be between 20 to 50 times more important, at least in the short term, when you compare it to carbon dioxide, which is also a very, very important and critical greenhouse gas. Methane, in addition, is a precursor to ozone, so it can actually act to increase ozone depletion, and therefore it has even much higher impact on global warming. Carbon dioxide, of course, all of us know this is a very, very persistent greenhouse gas. It's the most common greenhouse gas. There is the greenhouse gas perspective to carbon dioxide, but there is also the well-being perspective. So high concentrations of carbon dioxide. All of us know if we kind of sit in a closed meeting room for many, many hours together without proper ventilation, it can cause health problems. It's the same with animals. So high concentrations of carbon dioxide can cause respiratory diseases in animals when these high concentrations persist over a long period of time. Then there's ammonia. So ammonia is, of course, it begins to smell. It's a big odor nuisance already at low ppm concentrations, or really low concentrations. It can begin to cause diseases at higher concentrations in animals. Besides this problem, ammonia can also create aerosols, which impact the environmental quality, the air quality. It can cause formation of particulate matter, so really fine dust and things like this. So it also has a huge environmental impact. Now we spoke about these two pillars of the two perspectives that we go into livestock monitoring. This can reflect into various applications within livestock monitoring. So we have quite a few examples where gas monitoring becomes important to achieve these two goals of reducing the environmental impact from these gases, as well as increasing productivity and well-being of animals. One example is you would need to control scrubbers to reduce gas emissions from livestock operations. There you would need gas detection and gas monitoring solutions. You can regulate ventilation systems within livestock operations. So in pig farms, in cattle farms, in chicken farms, you can regulate the ventilation systems to maintain healthy gas concentrations. There are companies out there who are focusing to develop feed additives that reduce methane emissions from livestock. There are a lot of applications to monitor livestock gas emissions to certify for norm fulfillment. There is now an increasing free market where carbon credits, for example, are traded. So to certify this kind of credit generation, also gas monitoring plays an important role. You can monitor livestock health using methane breath concentrations. You will hear an excellent example of this application later on in the talk that David Yates will give. So that's another example. So there are a huge amount of examples within livestock monitoring applications where gas detection plays a very important role. On the other hand, besides the applications across the world, what we see is there are quite a lot of international regulations and quantification methodologies that have been developed, that are being developed and implemented. I'll just give you a few examples. Here, there is the EU Environmental Technology Verification System, the ETV, from which a few countries have gone ahead and developed the VERA testing protocol, which describes how gas monitoring solutions should quantify gas emissions, especially from livestock operations. In the US, there is, of course, since a few decades already, the EPA Clean Air Act. So part of this, there are certain sections in there, certain parts which refer to livestock operations. Recently, a few years ago, the Livestock Emissions Regulatory Protection Act has been passed in the US. There is the Emissions Rights Decree, which has been passed in South Korea. There is the Chinese 5-year plan for national livestock husbandry, which has been passed, and now there are further regulations which are coming up in China based on this. Of course, a lot in the news in recent weeks is the COP26 meeting and the methane reduction pledge, which has been taken by the EU and the US together, which will now also transform into various kind of regulations across the world. So overall, we see worldwide there is an increasing importance of quantification of real gas concentrations based on continuous and real-time data. So the accent, the focus here is really to quantify gas emissions, not just to guesstimate gas concentrations or emissions, but to really quantify them based on real monitoring and continuous monitoring. So that's where a product like the LGD Compact from Axetris plays in, because it really helps our customers to do this quantification based on real gas concentrations, based on continuous monitoring of real-time data. So just a few examples how sensors are playing an increasing role in livestock monitoring. Here's a picture of research project which was done in South Korea where the Axetris LGD was used. So you will see in the bottom left corner the Axetris LGD, which was integrated into a gas monitoring system with multi-point sampling across at different points within a cow shed. So the results from this research actually helped various aspects of the legal framework and the regulations that came out in South Korea. There was this is another example of the Nuclear Plasma Energy Institute in South Korea, where the LGD Compact methane as well as ammonia product was used to measure real-time emissions from livestock. So these are just a few examples of how sensors are beginning to play an ever-increasing role in livestock monitoring applications. Now, I'd like to go over to a short interview with a customer of ours, with a partner of ours. So Shaoji Zwang, you will hear some words from him. I went to Shaoji to discuss why he thinks livestock management systems are becoming more and more important. What is the importance of gas detection in livestock management systems, and what was his experience while working with the Axetris LGD. So Shaoji is a researcher at ILVO in Belgium, and now I'd like to show you what he had to say about these questions. So with me, I have Shaoji Zwang, or Z for short. He's a researcher at ILVO Belgium, the Flanders Research Institute for Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. Z has worked intensively with the LGD products from Axetris over the years in a variety of research projects and areas. Z, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Z, let me first get your view about why you think livestock management systems are critical to solve environmental issues.
Well, livestock production is undoubtedly very important to our modern society now. The sector offers us meat, milk, wool, leather, and many other products, which for many people it is pretty difficult to live without. But unfortunately, there's a catch. The livestock sector is a major emitter of ammonia and greenhouse gases. Well, ammonia is a very strong. It has a very strong impact on the ecosystem, and it is also one of the precursors of a particulate matter. And greenhouse gases produced during livestock production, in particular the carbon dioxide and methane, would lead to climate change. It is therefore very important to ensure that the whole livestock production process is sustainable. Taking the environmental impact into account in the farm management would, of course, have a very direct influence on the emission concerning when, where, and how much. Fortunately, there are also some measures that has become available. These measures can help farmers to reduce their environmental performance, such as using urease inhibitors to reduce the formation of ammonia or clean the outgoing air from the barn environment using an air scrubber. This measure also needs good management so they can achieve an optimal emission reduction efficiency.
Z, why is gas detection important for an efficient livestock management system? You just mentioned a few gases which are very, very important to be measured, but why do you think gas detection is important for an efficient livestock management system?
When we're talking about the environmental impact of livestock production, of course, we cannot address relevant issues without knowing exactly how much we're talking about. There are basically two ways to know the amount of emissions. Thus far, the most widely used approach is using models. So we predict emissions using several essential parameters such as the number of animals, the species, feed intake, housing type, and so on. The approach is easy to apply, but it comes with quite a lot of uncertainties. And then there's more demand on having direct measurements. Then that comes to the second approach. Say we measure the gas directly. This approach is more reliable and provides proof to the model-based approach. In daily farming, direct measurement can also provide timely indication of the situation of a farm, so the farmers can react immediately if something is not going correctly. Thus far, we've only talking about the environmental issues, but it's also very important to keep in mind those gas pollutants are also important for the indoor environment of a barn. Ammonia itself is a toxic gas. Even at low concentration, it's very irritating and it can lead to some chronic discomfort to both human and the animals. So it's important to keep the ammonia concentration inside animal house on the safety level. CO2 in general is it's not toxic, but it's a good indicator of air ventilation efficiency. So in our daily life, usually we use CO2 to indicate the indoor air quality to ensure that okay the office is good ventilated, for example. And methane, normally it's not being very harmful, but high concentration of methane is very risky. You can have a fire and even explosion. So it's also important to keep it monitored.
Thanks, Z. Z, you have worked with the Axetris LGD products over the years in a number of research projects. Could you tell us what advantages do you see while using the TDLS-based technology and the Axetris LGD products in particular for gas detection?
One thing particularly important when doing measurements, of course, it's we need to be sure that we only measure what we want to measure. So in technical term, that's the selectivity of a sensor. And in livestock environments, the challenge is the air composition is not always known. It's the air contains so many compounds and it's not consistent. It can change over time, either predictably or unpredictably. So we need a sensor that can only measure one gas and exclusive to that gas. And we know that TDLS technology has a very good selectivity, and that's why we use this technology for the measurement inside a livestock environment. And in terms of the Axetris products, the performance is pretty satisfying. We've done quite a lot of measurements and field performance testing, and it met the requirement that we need.
Thank you, Z, for joining us today and sharing your views on this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much.
So, as you heard from somebody who has worked with the Axetris LGD products for many, many years in this application, gas monitoring begins to play a very important role in livestock monitoring. It is a critical piece of the puzzle to solve the environmental challenge. And I'd like to summarize now the presentation with the advantages of the LGD Compact. So basically the product satisfies the need for a continuous measurement, which becomes more and more important for these applications. It is very, very selective, so you really measure what you want to measure. It is very, very precise down to ppm levels of gas concentrations. It is a more or less a maintenance-free product with self-referencing algorithm within the gas sensing part, thereby eliminating long-term drifts and things like this. This is why there is almost no maintenance required for many, many years. It is very, very compact, as the name says. It's only 17 centimeters long. It's very, very lightweight, less than 600 grams in weight, depending on the product configuration. Also lends itself to very portable applications. So these are more or less the advantages, which if I were to really put this in one sentence, I would say it's a unique combination of performance, size, and price point. So that's the message for today. And I would like to say that let's do our bit to move away from the blah, blah, blah about environmental protection by quantifying gas emissions using the Axetris LGD Compact. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions and discussing this topic further. Thank you.